So what really made me start this was when I was 15 years old, COVID happened and the tourism industry again went to zero. And so that affected my family business. We could no longer afford the international school I was going to. So I found a person online called Scott Young. In 2012, he took various online resources just using the internet and self-taught himself computer science. So based off of that inspired me because I had the time and I could no longer go to the school I was going to teach myself math and physics. So I was kind of the inspiration. I found him. And then from that, I was like, oh, this is very cool. I'd like to do it myself. And then I did. So the thing that you can actually teach versus what people have to discover on their own, I think sometimes there's very small cognitive habits that are a little bit hard to teach because they're so specific and precise. Sometimes when it comes to those types of things, I think it's easier to discover it experientially instead of me just giving it to you. That being said, for the most part, self-directed learning is again a skill that is again teachable. And that's one of the reasons why I founded this company, because it's not really being taught anywhere and learning is the meta skill of everything. That's kind of why I founded it. So yeah, that would be my answer. So there's a few things. The point with self-learners is it's not just tactics, but it's like a full system that you have. So everything depends on each other and it's also from principles. So it's not just about just this quick thing that you do. You actually become, you understand your brain better. And if you understand your brain better, you can learn better. So that's kind of the emphasis that we have. I would also say part of what we're trying to do, besides even the learning side, is to make learning more self-actualized. So self-actualized learning. So not just self-directed learning, but self-actualized learning. So how are we changing the reasons why we're learning? So it's not just about getting past an exam or getting through school or whatever. It's because we want to become the best versions of ourselves. So that's also one of the things I try to instill too. So I think obviously there's many things. If I had to pick one, I think I would pick a concept that's fairly often discussed is illusions of competence or illusions of false competence. What this means is that when we think that we actually understand something, oftentimes there's a lot of biases or we evaluate understanding in ways that actually aren't accurate. So one example could be, if I feel like I'm familiar with a topic, that doesn't necessarily mean I know it. I have to actually be able to explain it clearly or be tested on it in some way. So there's a lot of these specific things where we kind of trick ourselves into learning or knowing something, but the research suggests that actually we don't actually know it as well as we think we do. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, and there's a large disconnect, right? So that's one of the things I would say surprised me the most. Hura. Yes, Hura. Yeah, so the reason is because an AI layer speeds things up. One of the things I talk about, and I will be talking about during my event, the last skill, self-directed learning in the age of AI on May 27, is that AI makes self-directed learning possible. A lot of the gaps you could only have before with teachers, now you can use AI as your own personalized tutor if you know how to use it. So that's one thing. It fills a lot of gaps that just regular self-learning would not be able to. And the point of the app is to operationalize those gaps. So it's not just like a chat bot. We're trying to fill in what are all the ways that pretty much an AI could fit in within self-directed learning and trying to develop different features around that. I would say that's one thing. And back to the original point, it makes things, so besides making it possible, makes things a lot faster. So I'll give you one example. If I'm reading a textbook, I need to find a certain piece of information. Let's say I have a question I'm thinking about. With AI, I can get that information instantaneously. So there's like different things that make self-directed learning more efficient that you can't just have without AI or just with a regular textbook or whatever. So that's also part of the goal about why we're building this app in the first place. So the difference is that they're the pilot of their learning. So they understand how to, again, direct it and control it. They set their own goals. They find resources. They establish their own learning projects. And also they have a really deep understanding of how learning works and how their brain works. And that allows them to be a lot more efficient. So I think that those would be the differences. Yeah, so obviously resourcefulness. I think this is one of the most important skills, not even within like learning, but just in life in general. How do you be resourceful with what you have? So I think that's one of the things it gave me. And there's a lot of like specific, interesting, like we could say like hacks or tricks that I learned that I wouldn't have learned if, let's say, I had tutors or had all this other infrastructure to learn from. So I had to kind of adapt and find other ways to go about it. That being said, all of that time, it gave me new knowledge that I wouldn't have had if I had all the other infrastructure. So obviously there's pros and cons, but I think that there was a benefit to even like supposedly having it worse off at the time. Yeah, so that's the biggest thing. And that's one of the reasons why I talk a little bit more about self-actualized learning. So schools really emphasize a lot of grades, and they don't really emphasize like learning for the sake of being better at what you're doing, being better at your craft, being a master of your craft, and learning for the sake of learning, and also learning just because you wanna know more, right? Forget exactly the phrase, but there was I believe in Aristotle's philosophy textbook, he, in one of his, I forget which one, he talked about humans have this intrinsic desire to know. And so oftentimes that's kind of suppressed because we're learning literally just to pass the test and then we forget it. So I think that there should be more of an emphasis on intrinsic motivators than extrinsic motivators. That's what I would do as a parent. So there's typically three main ones. There is purpose, autonomy and mastery. So emphasize those three over like being, okay, oh, you have to study because you have like this homework or whatever. They're going to be a lot more motivated if there's a different emphasis behind it. Now, obviously, like even then, they still have to be like disciplined. They have to discipline themselves to be able to do it, to learn, etc. But it's still a lot more motivating when there's an internal reason instead of an external reason, right? Yeah. So I think in terms of let's say the negatives now. So obviously, this is something new. We're trying to build an ecosystem to teach this like pretty, like I would say not necessarily new skill because it's been researched for quite a bit, but at least most people haven't developed it deliberately. So obviously when there's something new that hasn't been tested, there's always a lot of things that could go wrong. My hope is that I can pivot and adapt even when things go wrong. And in terms of the positive vision, I think that in the future, I'd like to have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in our community using our app, going through our cohorts, going through all these things so that we can make as much impact as possible in 10 years.